The crowd filled the great arena, their voices rising like thunder. Thousands of alien warriors, nobles, and commoners gathered to watch the spectacle. The arena was a circle of stone and steel, with walls that reached high into the sky. Bright lights burned above, casting long shadows across the sand. The ground was stained with marks of past battles, reminders of those who had fallen. At the center of the arena stood the Queen of Axes. Her body was tall, covered in gleaming armor that reflected the light like fire in each of her massive hands. She held an axe, the blades glowing with a strange red energy. These were not ordinary weapons. They were forged from the core of a dying star. Able to cut through metal, stone, and bone with ease, the queen raised her arms, lifting the axes into the air. The crowd roared, chanting her name. They had seen her fight many times before, and they knew what always happened. No one could stand against her. No one had survived. She is unstoppable. One alien whispered to his friend. Her axes have never been stopped, another replied. The fear in their voices was mixed with admiration, for to them, she was not just a fighter. She was a living legend. But in the shadows of the arena gates, a human watched quietly. His wrists were bound with chains, his clothes torn and covered with dust. He had been captured days ago, dragged across alien worlds, and now he was here. No one in the crowd cared about his name. No one believed he was anything more than prey. The queen's voice echoed across the arena, deep and powerful. No one can defeat me, she declared. No blade, no army, no power can stop my axes. The crowd roared again, cheering. They believed her words because they had seen it countless times. The human lifted his head. His eyes were calm. His body was thin compared to the queen's massive frame, but there was something in his gaze, something that did not break. The guards who stood near him noticed it and felt uneasy. The gates opened, and the human was pushed forward into the arena. The crowd laughed. Many shouted insults. Some even threw objects at him. To them, this was not a fight. It was entertainment. A small creature about to be crushed. The human walked slowly to the center, his chains rattling as he moved. He looked up at the queen. She looked down at him, her glowing axes resting at her sides. A cruel smile spread across her face. "You are the next challenger?" she asked. Her voice carried mockery. A fragile human, soft flesh and weak bones. The crowd laughed with her. The human said nothing. He only stared. His silence was heavier than words. The queen's smile faded for a moment, but she quickly laughed again. "You will fall like the others," she said. She raised her axes and spun them in the air. The red light from the blades painted the sand like fire. The sound of the spinning axes whistled sharply, reminding the crowd of how many lives they had already taken. The announcer, a tall alien with a booming voice, raised his hand. "The challenge begins," he shouted. "The Queen of Axes faces the human." The crowd cheered louder than before. The queen stepped forward. Her heavy armor made the ground shake with each move. She raised her right axe high, preparing to strike. Her eyes glowed with hunger for victory. For her, this was not just a fight, it was proof of her power. The human lowered his head slightly. His breathing slowed. He did not look afraid. Instead, he studied her movement, the way her muscles shifted, the way her grip tightened around the weapon. He had fought battles before. He had seen death before. Queen raised both axes now, spinning them with deadly skill. The crowd shouted her name again. The air filled with the sound of metal cutting through the wind. The fight was about to begin. But in that moment, as the queen prepared to strike, something strange passed through the arena. A silence fell, as if the entire place held its breath. The crowd did not know why. The queen did not know why. But the human knew, for in his heart, he was not here to be prey. He was here to prove that even the strongest can fall. And as the first axe came crashing down toward him, the story of the arena was about to change forever. Asterisk, the queen's axe slammed into the sand, sending dust into the air. The ground trembled with the weight of her strike. The crowd screamed with joy, believing the fight was already over. But as the dust cleared, They saw the human had moved. His chains rattled as he rolled to the side. Escaping death by inches, the queen narrowed her eyes. Her smile turned sharp. "You are faster than I thought," she said. Her voice was like thunder rolling across the arena. She spun her axes in both hands, the glowing blades humming with deadly energy. The crowd laughed and shouted insults at the human. They believed he would only last a few more moments. Break him, crush him, end him. They screamed. To them, the outcome was already decided. The Queen of Axes always won, and she always won quickly. But the human stood tall. His breathing was steady, his eyes focused not on the queen's glowing weapons, but on the rhythm of her movements. He watched the way she shifted her weight, the way her muscles pulled before each strike. Every small detail became a clue. Every second was a chance to learn. The queen circled him slowly, her armor clanking as she moved. "Do you know what they call me?" she asked. "They call me death itself. They call me the storm of axes. No blade, no shield. No warrior has ever stood against me and lived." The human tilted his head slightly. His silence made the crowd restless. Some shouted louder, mocking his refusal to answer. Others grew curious, wondering why he did not beg for mercy. The queen raised one axe and pointed it at him. The red glow lit his face. "Do you not fear me, human?" she demanded. "Your bones will break, your flesh will burn, and your ashes will be scattered across this arena." Still, the human did not speak. He only took one slow step forward, his chains dragging across the sand, the sound of iron scraping against stone echoed louder than the cheers. For the first time, the queen's smile flickered. The announcer stepped forward to remind the crowd of the rules. His booming voice carried over the noise. "The challenge is simple," he declared. "The queen fights until her opponent falls. There is no surrender. There's no mercy, only victory or death." The crowd erupted again, chanting the queen's name. The queen lifted her axes high, the blades crossing above her head. The light from them shimmered across the arena walls. "Then let this human fall as the others have," she roared. "Let him be a lesson to all who dare believe they can stop me." But deep inside, she felt something she had never felt before. A shadow of doubt. She had fought giants, armored beasts, and machines of war. None had ever unnerved her, yet this human's steady eyes, his refusal to bow or tremble, unsettled her. The human tightened his fists around his chains. He pulled them forward, testing their weight. To the crowd it looked meaningless. To the queen it looked like weakness. But the human was not testing strength. He was calculating. He was planning. The queen lunged forward. Her right axe swung in a deadly arc. The human ducked low, the blade slicing the air above him. The wind from the strike whipped through his hair. The second axe followed quickly, aiming to cut him in two. He rolled aside, the blade cutting deep into the stone floor. Sparks flew like fire. Gasps rippled through the crowd. This was not normal. Most challengers fell in the first strike, yet the human was still standing, still breathing. The queen's eyes narrowed. Further, her voice dropped low. "Interesting," she whispered. The announcer shouted again, his voice trying to match the growing tension. "The human still stands, but for how long? The queen has never failed. Her axes always draw blood. Will he be the first to break her legend, or will he join the fallen?" The crowd roared even louder. Some began to shout for the queen. Others, surprisingly, began to shout for the human. It was strange, unexpected. But the idea of a fragile human facing the invincible queen stirred something in their hearts. Queen swung again and again, each strike faster, heavier. Each strike meant to crush him like an insect. The human dodged, barely escaping each time. His chains clanged against the stone. His body moved like water flowing between rocks. Finally, the queen raised both axes for a double strike. The human stepped forward instead of back, his chains twisted, wrapping around her left wrist. For a brief moment, her arm jerked. Her strike lost balance. The crowd gasped again. The impossible had just happened. The queen ripped her arm free with raw strength. But her smile was gone. She growled. Her voice filled with rage. "You dare!" she hissed. "You dare touch me!" The crowd fell into stunned silence. They had never seen her unsettled before. The human straightened. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, but his eyes burned brighter. He had survived longer than anyone else. He had even forced her to stumble. The impossible was starting to look possible, and as the queen raised her axes again, the air grew heavy. The challenge was no longer just a fight. It was becoming something greater, a battle of pride, a battle of willpower. And somewhere in the crowd, a whisper began to spread. Maybe the human can win. The arena grew tense. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Thousands of eyes watched the human and the queen of axes. Waiting for the first true clash, the dust swirled around their feet, and the light of the glowing blades cut through the haze. The queen snarled and rushed forward. Her armor thundered with each step. Her right axe came down with enough force to split the ground. The human slid sideways, the blade slamming into the stone where he had stood. Cracks spread across the floor like lightning. The crowd roared with excitement, believing the end was near. But the human did not fall. Instead, he closed the distance, his chains whipping around. He struck at her legs, not to break them, but to test her balance. She shifted back with surprising speed for her size, pulling her axe free from the stone. Sparks burst as she dragged the weapon along the floor. "You move well for prey," she growled. Her voice was heavy with anger. But beneath it was something else, a hint of curiosity. She spun the second axe toward his chest. The human ducked, the weapon cutting the air so close it brushed the fabric of his torn shirt. The crowd gasped in unison. Some shouted for her to finish him. Others shouted for the human. The sound of their divided voices echoed across the walls. For the first time in the arena's history, the audience was uncertain. The queen attacked again. Her strikes were fast, powerful, merciless. The axes spun like twin storms, their red glow burning brighter. But the human's body twisted and turned. His eyes never left her movements. He was reading her, watching the rhythm of her swings. Each dodge brought him closer to understanding her style. Then came the first true clash. The queen's left axe came sweeping low. The human snapped his chains upward. Metal rang against metal. The crowd fell silent for a heartbeat. The sound of the strike echoed louder than any cheer. The human's arm shook from the impact. But he had stopped her weapon. The queen blinked, her grin fading. Her axe had never been caught like that. She yanked it free with brute strength, nearly dragging the human off his feet. But he landed firm, planting his boots into the sand. His breath was heavy, yet his eyes still glowed with defiance. "You are not like the others," the queen said. Her tone dropped lower, as if she spoke more to herself than to him. "But you will still die." She launched forward with a furious strike. Both axes crossed in a deadly X meant to crush him. The human dove forward, rolling under the blades. Sand exploded as they smashed into the ground behind him. The arena trembled from the sheer force. The crowd screamed in disbelief. This fragile human had survived again. He rose quickly. His chains now wrapped tighter in his fists. His movements were sharper, more focused. He was no longer only dodging, he was preparing. The queen spun and swung at his back. The human turned just in time. His chains lashed outward. They wrapped around the handle of her right axe. The queen snarled and pulled, but the human pulled too. For a moment, weapon and chain locked in a battle of strength. The crowd leaned forward, holding their breath. Could the human truly challenge her grip? The queen's power was legendary. She had broken giants in half. She had shattered machines. Yet this thin human held on. With a sudden twist, the human released one end of his chain. The axe jerked sideways. The queen staggered for half a second. It was not much, but it was enough. The crowd erupted with shock. Some shouted in anger, others in awe. The queen roared, her fury boiling over. Her axes spun faster than ever. Each swing carved deep lines into the stone. The human leapt, dodged, and rolled. His body burned with exhaustion, yet his spirit refused to yield. Every close call filled the arena with gasps. Every survival sparked more whispers. He struck again, his chain snapping across her arm. The sound of metal hitting armor rang out. She snarled, swinging wildly, but the human was already moving. His tactics were clear now. He could not overpower her, but he could outthink her. The announcer's voice boomed, his tone trembling with excitement. The human does not fall. The human fights still. He has clashed with the Queen's axes, and still stands. This is no ordinary battle. This is history. The Queen's rage grew deeper. Her strikes lost some rhythm, replaced by blind fury. The human's eyes narrowed. He saw it. He felt it. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The first true clash had not ended in her victory. It had ended in doubt, for the first time. The Queen of Axes had tasted resistance, and for the first time, the crowd began to wonder if her reign of blood might finally end. The clash had changed everything. The crowd no longer laughed at the human, no longer mocked him as prey. Instead, they leaned forward, eyes wide, whispers spreading like fire. This was not a normal battle. Something unseen was happening. The Queen of Axes paced around him, her armor gleaming with the glow of her weapons. Her eyes burned with fury. "You are no ordinary human," she growled. "Tell me, what trick hides behind your silence?" She spun one axe lazily in her hand, the red light pulsing. "You dodge, you survive, but you cannot win." The human stood still. His chains hung loosely at his sides. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. Sweat ran down his brow. But his eyes never left hers. He said nothing, and the silence weighed heavier than words. Among the crowd, a voice whispered, "I heard humans once fought wars across their own world," another added. "They say they adapt faster than any species," a third muttered. "Maybe he was a soldier," the rumor spread. The more the human endured, the more the legend grew. Some had thought humans weak, soft, fragile, but now they wondered if that weakness was only a mask. The Queen struck again. Her axe whistled through the air. The human shifted aside, his chains snapping out. They wrapped around her weapon for a second before slipping free. It was not enough to disarm her, but enough to anger her. Her roar shook the arena. The announcer's voice boomed again. "See how the human studies her. See how he does not fight with strength but with patience." The words echoed across the stands, feeding the whispers of the crowd. The Queen stopped for a moment, staring at him. Her grin returned, sharp and cruel. "You wait for weakness, don't you?" she said. "You think you can read me. You think you can see patterns in my strikes." She raised her axe high. "But I am chaos, I am storm, and storms cannot be studied." She lunged. Her axes flew in wild fury, blades crashing into stone, sparks flying with every strike. The human dodged, his body moving faster than before. His mind raced. His eyes followed not her strength, but her rhythm. She claimed to be chaos, but even chaos had patterns. He remembered training long ago, not on this alien world but on Earth. The voices of old commanders echoed in his memory. "Watch the enemy's shoulders, not the weapon. See the tension before the strike. Every movement leaves a clue." The Queen raised both axes for a devastating blow. The human stepped sideways just before she moved. He was already gone before her strike landed. The blades carved deep scars into the ground. She blinked in shock. He had predicted her attack. The crowd gasped. Murmurs filled the air. He knew before she even swung. How is that possible? He reads her like a book. The Queen snarled, frustration boiling. Over. She struck again and again, but each time he was there first. His chains brushed her armor, striking her arms, slowing her swing. He was not only dodging now, he was shaping the fight. Her rage grew. Her swings lost precision. Her breath came heavier. The human's eyes narrowed. He had seen it before, on Earth. A warrior who depended only on strength always broke when their rhythm was stolen. The announcer shouted above the chaos, "The Queen is strong, but the human is clever." He learns, he adapts, and every moment makes him more dangerous. The crowd roared in agreement. Some even rose to their feet, shouting his name though they did not even know it. They shouted only, "Human! Human!" The queen's teeth bared, her pride wounded. Never before had a challenger lasted this long. Never before had her strikes been turned against her. Her voice thundered across the arena. "You think you are clever, human. But cleverness will not save you when your body breaks." The human finally spoke. His voice was calm, low, steady. Strength fades, patterns remain. His words struck harder than any blade. The crowd froze at the sound. It was the first time they had heard him speak. The queen roared and swung again, her fury like fire. But the human's secret was clear now. It was not his chains, not his speed, not even his endurance. It was his mind, his ability to adapt, to read, to learn. Every move she made, he studied. Every mistake she gave, he stored. The Queen of Axes, for the first time, was being undone not by a stronger weapon, but by a sharper will. And in that moment, the legend of humanity began to spread through the arena like wildfire. The crowd no longer saw a fragile creature. They saw something terrifying, something unstoppable. A fighter who could turn even the deadliest storm into a map of weakness. The queen raised her axes once more. But the seed of doubt was planted. She was no longer facing prey. She was facing a predator who had learned her every step. The arena trembled with the weight of the battle. The Queen of Axes stood in the center, her chest heaving, her glowing blades dripping with heat. The human stood opposite her, chains wrapped around his fists, his body bruised, his breaths heavy. Yet his eyes sharp. The crowd had changed. No longer did they laugh. No longer did they mock. Instead, they whispered in awe. Some even cheered his name. They had seen many warriors fall in seconds, yet this human endured. He fought not with brute power, but with something deeper. The queen growled, her pride burning hotter than her rage. She was a storm of fury, a legend of victory. And now this fragile human dared to defy her. "Enough!" she roared. Her axes rose high, their red light flashing across the arena. "This ends now," she charged. Her steps shook the ground. Her twin blades whirled with deadly speed. The air itself screamed as the glowing axes cut through it. The human waited, his body still, his eyes locked on her movements. He had studied her rhythm. He had learned her weakness, and now he was ready. The first axe came down, a strike that had ended countless lives. But the human did not run. He stepped forward, chains snapping outward. His right hand caught the handle just beneath the blade. The arena gasped. 1,000 voices went silent. The weapon trembled. The queen snarled and pulled, expecting the fragile man to be torn apart. But he held, his muscles strained. His feet dug into the sand. His eyes blazed. For the first time in history, her unstoppable axe had been stopped. The crowd erupted. Some screamed in disbelief. Others cheered wildly. The announcer's voice shook as he cried. He caught it. The human caught her axe. The queen's face twisted in shock. Her grin shattered. Her pride cracked. She roared and swung the second axe, her arm slicing downward with unstoppable force. But the human moved again. His chains lashed forward, wrapping tight around her wrist. The blade missed, striking the ground with a thunderous crash. Sparks exploded as stone split beneath her strike. The human yanked, pulling her arm off balance. For the first time, the queen stumbled. Her armor clattered as her body tilted. The crowd shouted louder than ever before. Some could not believe their eyes. The legend of the queen was breaking. The human twisted, his chain tightening around her captured axe. With one fierce pull, he drove the weapon into the sand, locking it there. The glowing blade hissed, its light flickering against the dust. The queen roared in fury. She had never been disarmed, never been forced to bend. The announcer's voice thundered. The human has stopped her. He has trapped the queen's weapon. The crowd's roar shook the very walls of the arena. The queen tore her arm free, ripping the chain apart with raw power. Her chest rose and fell with fury. Her voice cracked like lightning. "You dare humiliate me," she screamed. "You dare touch my blades." The human straightened, his body shaking with exhaustion, but his spirit unbroken. He met her furious gaze with calm eyes. His silence spoke louder than any words, and in that silence, the crowd felt the shift. The impossible was no longer impossible. The queen raised her remaining axe, her strikes wild with rage. She slashed left, right, down, each blow strong enough to crush stone, but her rhythm was broken. Her focus scattered. The human slipped through each attack. His chains flicked, striking her arms, slowing her swings. For every move she made, he had an answer. For every strike she launched, he had already seen the shadow of it before it landed. His mind, his patience, his will, they turned the storm into something he could control. Then came the moment. The queen lifted her axe high for a killing strike. The crowd screamed, knowing the end was near. But the human stepped forward instead of back. His hands shot up. His chains wrapped the handle. His foot slammed into her armored leg. Her balance shattered. The weapon slipped. The human twisted, driving the axe sideways. The blade crashed into the ground, sending up a cloud of dust and sparks. The queen's roar shook the arena. She pulled, but for the first time, her strength failed to reclaim her weapon. The announcer's voice broke through the noise. "The human has turned her own weapon against her." The crowd's cheers exploded into thunder. Half shouted for the queen, half shouted for the human. The arena had never been so divided. The queen glared at him, her pride bleeding through her fury. "This is not victory," she spat. "You are nothing but a shadow standing in the light of a storm." But the crowd saw differently. They saw a fragile human who had touched the untouchable. They saw a challenger who had stood against the storm. And deep inside, they began to wonder, if the queen could stumble, could she fall? And as the human stood before her, chains wrapped around the glowing axe, his chest heaving, his silence unbroken, the answer was closer than ever. The turning point had come, and the storm of axes was no longer untouchable. The arena shook with noise. The crowd was split. Some cried for the queen of axes. Others shouted for the human. Never before had the people seen such defiance. Never before had anyone forced the queen to stumble. The queen's chest rose and fell with rage. Her pride was bleeding. Her legend was cracking. She tore her arm free, pulling against the human's chains. Sparks flew as the trapped axe shivered in the sand. With a roar, she ripped it free, lifting both blades once more. Her voice thundered across the arena. "I will break you. I will burn your name into dust. No one sham as the queen of axes and lives." She lunged forward. Her twin weapons spun like fire. The sand burst beneath her feet as she charged. The human braced himself. His body ached, his skin bruised, his arms heavy. Yet his eyes never wavered. His silence was a wall. His will was iron. He had studied her rhythm. He had broken her flow. And now he was ready to end it. The first axe cut low. He jumped aside, rolling across the sand. The second axe followed, whistling downward. He caught the handle with his chain, twisting his body. The weapon buried itself into the stone floor. The queen snarled, pulling hard. But in that instant she was open. The human struck. His chain lashed out, wrapping her armored arm. He pulled with every ounce of strength left in him. Her body tilted, her balance failing. The crowd screamed. The queen stumbled. She roared and swung her free axe, her fury wild. Her blade cut across the air with deadly speed. But the human was already inside her guard. His chains coiled around the handle. His fists slammed against her armor. It was not strength that carried him. It was timing, precision, willpower. The queen fought to free herself. Her body shook with fury. Her muscles burned. Her legend screamed to survive. But the human did not yield. His grip was unbreakable. His mind sharper than steel. His eyes brighter than fire. The announcer's voice rose above the storm. "The queen falters. The human does not break. This is the fall of the storm." The crowd roared. Louder than thunder, some wept, some shouted, some shook in disbelief. The queen screamed, lifting her leg to strike him down, but the human twisted, yanking her arm across her own body. Her axe cut empty air, her own strength betrayed her. She staggered forward, her knees bent, her armor scraped the sand. The human moved with speed born of desperation. He drove her captured axe into the ground, forcing her down further. His chains tightened, binding her strikes. She pulled, but the harder she fought, the more her own power worked against her. The arena shook with chants. Human, human. The sound grew like a wave crashing over the queen's pride. For the first time, she looked small. For the first time, she looked uncertain. The queen gasped with fury, her eyes blazing. No, I am eternal, I am the storm. But her voice cracked, her body betrayed her. Her strength was slipping. The human struck again. His chain wrapped her second axe. With one last heave, he forced it downward. The glowing blade sank into the sand beside its twin. Both weapons trapped, both blades useless. The queen fell to her knees. Silence fell over the arena. The crowd could not believe it. The queen of axes, the unstoppable, the undefeated, was kneeling, her weapons pinned, her pride shattered. The announcer's voice trembled. The human has brought the queen to her knees. The queen lifted her head. Her eyes burned with hate. You cannot win. You are only a man, she hissed. The human stepped closer. His body swayed with exhaustion. His chains rattled softly. He looked down at her, his silence heavier than any words. The crowd held their breath, waiting. The storm had ended. The legend was broken. The fall of the queen had come, and standing above her was the proof. A single human, fragile in body but unbreakable in spirit. The arena had never been so silent. The queen of axes, the storm of death, the undefeated warrior of the galaxies, was on her knees. Her glowing blades, once feared across countless worlds, lay trapped in the sand. Her arms trembled, her breath came heavy, her pride was shattered. The human stood above her, his body bruised, his clothes torn, his chains worn thin, yet he stood. He stood tall where no one else ever had. His silence thundered louder than the cheers, louder than the roars. It was the silence of victory. The crowd erupted. Their voices filled the sky. Human, 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 they cried. Some tore banners from their walls. Others pounded their fists against the railings. Never before had they seen such defiance. Never before had anyone broken the legend. The announcer's voice cracked with awe. The queen has fallen. The storm has broken. A human has done the impossible. His words echoed through the arena like prophecy. The queen lifted her head slowly. Her eyes glared at him, but the fire inside them was dim. Her voice was hoarse. You think this makes you strong. You are only flesh, fragile and weak. The human leaned closer. His chains dangled in his hands. His breath was ragged, but his eyes burned with steel. At last he spoke. His words were calm, steady, unshakable. Flesh breaks, will does not. The words rippled through the crowd like a storm. Gasps rose, then cheers, then chants. His voice had said what they all felt. He was not just a man. He was something greater, a symbol. The queen's arms sagged, her weapons buried. Her reign of fear ended not by a stronger beast, not by a greater machine, but by a human. A creature she and many others had once mocked as weak. The human turned, his gaze sweeping across the endless sea of faces. Their chants grew louder. He had no crown, no throne, no army, yet in that moment he carried something heavier, the weight of belief. The announcer shouted again, his voice shaking, "Remember this day, remember this fight, for the galaxy has learned a new truth. A human has stood against the storm and proved unbreakable." Across the arena, alien warriors bowed their heads, some in respect, some in fear. They had seen power defeated not by greater power, but by determination, endurance, and will. The queen, once a legend, now knelt in silence. Her axes no longer symbols of victory, but reminders of her fall. And the human, nameless to most, became a legend in her place. Children in the crowd would carry this story to their homes. Soldiers would whisper it in their barracks. Leaders would fear it in their councils. A truth carved itself into the hearts of many. Humans were not weak. They were dangerous in a way no weapon could match. The queen lowered her gaze, her pride swallowed. She whispered under her breath, "Perhaps storms can be broken." Her words were lost in the chants of the crowd. But the human heard them. His silence was his answer. The arena doors opened. Guards stood frozen, uncertain. Should they cheer? Should they attack? Should they kneel? None dared move against the man who had broken the storm. The human walked slowly toward the gates, his body heavy, his steps uneven, but his back straight. The chains dragged behind him, leaving lines in the sand. Each step was a message. Each step was history. The crowd followed his movement with their eyes. Their chants grew softer but deeper. Not just noise but devotion. His figure, small compared to the vast arena, carried more weight than any army as he passed through the gates. The legend was sealed. He had arrived in chains, but he left as a symbol. The galaxy had seen strength of flesh countless times, but this was something else, strength of will. And from that day, across stars and worlds, one truth spread like fire, whispered in fear, in respect, in awe. Never underestimate a human.